Duolingo's fun, don't get me wrong, but it's not optimized for how humans actually learn languages. In this video, we're breaking down the linguistic mismatch at the heart of the app, the better way to learn, and if you insist on using Duo, the tweaks that actually make it useful. Spoilers, you're probably not going to like those. And full disclosure, I used and still sometimes do use Duolingo. When my daughter was first born, I was putting in like 2 hours a day in Duolingo French while holding her for contact naps, and it was a great way to spend time that wasn't just mindlessly scrolling social media. I even learned a few things, and some of them I even retained. But it's just not the best way to actually learn a language, as I'm sure you've heard before, especially on its own. Now, lots of people say that, and you didn't need me to tell you that. But what I'll do that the others don't is explain why it's not ideal, and then we can answer two separate but related questions. What actually is ideal, and how can we make Duolingo more like that if we really just like learning with le hibou vert? And no, the problem is not their AI-first mindset. That's a whole separate video, honestly. If you're new to the channel, I'm Dr. Taylor Jones. I've got a PhD in linguistics from the University of Pennsylvania, and on the channel I discuss everything related to language, linguistics, language learning, and culture. If you're into those topics, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. This is Language Jones. So the problem with Duolingo is not their AI-first stance, nor is it the fact that every course is different. That's actually a plus. Nor is it the weird sentences like, my zebra ate a balloon, or the ducks are conspiring against us. Those are also actually a boost for memory and retention. Instead, it's a complex of factors that all interrelate based on how they teach. First is information overload. You're simultaneously trying to learn phonology, that's the sounds of the language, morphology and syntax, and vocabulary, and it's all in a way that's not optimized for memorization and retention. As you're learning a language, you should be starting with the sounds of a language. Duolingo is okay with this, but not great. Not just because they don't explain it, but that's a huge part of it. And this is where the AI-first approach is a problem. Some of their AI voices are just not good enough for you to learn the correct sounds. I'm looking at you, check. And when it's not AI voices, it can be hard to hear what is a general phonological alternation and what is casual speech and what is something else. Sounds go together to make morphemes, the meaningful building blocks of words. Think about how meaningful is composed of mean and ing and full, and they combine together to mean something more. And then you have to learn the words themselves. And the syntax, that's the conjugation paradigms, word order, all that stuff. Sometimes Duolingo is really good, as when they consistently use the Germanic equivalents of what they're teaching in French, so you can actually map phrases like go out to their French, their Romance counterparts. And sometimes their idiomatic translations don't particularly help at all. So you're trying to translate, fine, not ideal but fine, and you're also trying to grok new information across like 4 different linguistic domains. And on top of that, the structure is not optimized for memorization. Now, back when it was the tree, it was a little loosey-goosey and choose your own adventure. The path, I think, is a net positive, but they have been tinkering and tinkering and tinkering with the organization of the path, and its current iteration, last I saw, does not provide effective spaced repetition of what you're learning. Meaning, you do all that work, but you're not going to lock in what you learned because you didn't really fully understand it and you don't see it enough afterwards. I have my theories as to why this is, but I have to add a little more before we get to that theory. If you want to learn more about memorization for languages and best practices I recommend, be sure to check out this video. I'll link it at the end. But here's the thing. The path keeps you locked in without really seeing where you're going. If you buy a textbook, you can flip through it, skim it, see what all the contents are, develop a plan, target weak areas, and so on. For Duolingo, the path is just not transparently linked to a clear progression with standards of learning, either in terms of content or in terms of training and testing. What Duolingo does is give you a dopamine hit from new words and from gamification, all that XP, the feeling of progress through a circular progress bar in a lesson, or movement along a path with a skill. But you're not getting a picture of how many words and grammatical structures you've studied, how many you've ostensibly learned to the point that you should be able to use them, or anything along those lines, really. There's not even really a meaningful way of doing targeted reviews, although you can do some partial lessons over again, but it's discouraged in the UX. Why is this? Well, Duolingo's mission is not to teach you a language. I've mentioned this elsewhere. Teaching you a language is a secondary goal. It's certainly one that's beneficial to them overall, except for maybe not. Duolingo runs on subscription payments or ads, and they've gamified learning ostensibly to make it effective, but more realistically to keep you on the app. They're financially incentivized to keep you using their app as long as possible. They're not incentivized to teach you a language quickly and effectively because then you won't keep using the app. It's the whole problem with language learning in general. And if you say, if they're effective, I'll learn another language with them, that may feel true, but there's a very practical, very low ceiling on the number of languages anybody would learn with them. What they're really designed to do is keep your attention with a language-focused app. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't learn a language from them. I honestly found that with some tweaks, their Hebrew course is one of the best things out there for learning Hebrew. But it means that you need to be aware that they are incentivized to make you feel like you're making progress, not to actually, make progress. And while I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, when I started using spaced repetition software with an optimized strategy for encoding for memory, I started really getting a lot more out of Duolingo as a source of example sentences and not the whole thing. If you're studying Hebrew, you can check out a huge document that I made while taking notes as I worked my way through their course. It's over on my Patreon. And that's the thing. From the courses where I've actually seen all the content is good. But their job isn't to impart that content to you quickly or effectively. It's to have good content as a lure and for you to feel like you're accomplishing something while continuing to use the app indefinitely. So what's the answer? Well, I'll tell you what it isn't. It isn't swapping it out for other AI-based apps. That's just more of the same. And the conversation-based AI apps tend to be the same but with less structured of a learning path. And don't get me started on just having ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever teach you. It's not always clear whether what you're learning is actually used in real life, is correct, or in some cases, even real words. I once asked ChatGPT for a list of nif'al conjugation verbs in Hebrew with 4 root letters. To my knowledge, there aren't any, but I thought, why not try the AI and see what it says? It confidently returned a long list of words that were all hidpa'el conjugation verbs in the first person plural. This is not a good way to learn a language. Confidently wrong is not ideal. If you're ready to ditch Duolingo entirely, what works is targeted study. Determine your why, and then select materials to help you get to that goal. That can be a textbook. I've been using the Routledge Colloquial series for various languages recently, a course, a teacher, a school, even a streaming platform like LingoPie, depending on your level. I even use children's books and, yes, phrase books with my textbook to Anki pipeline to memorize the contents. And that's the crucial part. You don't have to do it like I do, but what you need and what Duolingo is lacking is the elements that really help you remember, retain, and reproduce the language you are learning. And improvise. That's effective encoding. Apps that have real audio and pictures and interactive portions where you actually have to decide what to respond are going to be better than apps that only have text-based translation of random sentences, especially if those sentences are algorithmically generated. You'll need a memorization practice that takes into account the benefits of structured, spaced repetition. In my case, this effectively entailed using Duolingo as a source of content to memorize, but then having outside study time to actually do that memorizing before skipping ahead in the app to the next chunk of things to memorize. It's also ideal to have, progress tracking. When I look at my Anki statistics, and that's just the app that I use, I know how many words I'm learning from a given source, how many I've already studied, and what subset of those are mature and I should expect to actually know and be able to use, and what subset are not fully ready for prime time yet. And this hasn't even gotten to the part where you test your boundaries and figure out what things you want or need to say but you can't yet say. For instance, in the middle of writing the script, I needed to write somebody and I wanted to say we were invited, but I realized I could only say X invited us. The ideal thing to do once I learned the passive form there is to add it to my spaced repetition and learn it. But let's say you're not ready to kick the little green owl to the curb. Is there a place for Duolingo? Yeah, the toilet. No, really, it's actually a great way to do something that passes the time. It's also good at bus stops, subway rides, the train. And that's the real problem. We want to learn a language with no effort and spare moments in our commute or in an elevator or on the toilet. I can't speak for anybody else, but I can't really think of any active skills I've actually learned in those situations. Yes, you can learn a little about something or think about a topic you like, and that reflecting on it will help as a little teeny tiny supplement to your actual skill building, but it cannot replace actual skill building. If you want to learn judo, you have to spend time on the mats. You can't just watch YouTube videos about it and think you're going to understand or be able to apply kuzushi, off balancing. Same with language learning. So let's say you just really want to make Duolingo work for you. I get it. The real way to make Duolingo work is something like my document for Hebrew combined with that textbook to Anki pipeline. I'll probably make a few for other languages once I get around to version 2 of this one and finish up the Anki decks I'm currently building for Hebrew and Italian. If I were to do Duolingo for another language, and I might, here's what I would do. First, speedrun the course, but don't just do that to get through everything. The XP doesn't matter. Instead, extract all the vocabulary. Fill in missing gaps in what they're teaching. For instance, in some languages, they don't teach a full conjugation paradigm for all the verbs they introduce. As you're going, relate the vocab to useful chunks, collocations, and sort of phrasey bits, not full sentences. Maybe extract a few full sentences that are indicative of sentence structures you want to learn. Then Anki dump using the method I've outlined elsewhere. You can watch my other videos for the details on why I do things this way, but the short version is to take your spreadsheet, or however you're tracking it, import to Anki, add audio. I use HyperTTS, which can do either AI-generated text-to-speech from a variety of sources, or even draw from real recordings of actual people from Forvo. Add images that relate to the things that you're memorizing, and add mnemonic images where needed. For me, I just use the English and the image for the target word as a trigger to generate the language chunk in my target language, trying to do so as fast and as fluently as possible. Build in a practice of doing this every day, and then go back and use Duolingo in your spare time as a sort of randomized review of content in context. When I started doing that, I actually found that using Duolingo, and by that I mean actual time spent on the app, was boosting my language retention and comprehension, and I was actually getting a lot out of it. But what are we actually doing here? This, one, makes you actively engage with the material in a much more serious manner, analyzing and refining your understanding. Two, builds in much more effective spaced repetition using the platform of your choice. And three, makes your use of the actual app actually effective review. It's also a ton of hard work, which is exactly what somebody using Duolingo is trying to avoid. So why do that at all? Well, first of all, and probably the main reason for anybody using Duolingo, it's free. But beyond that, there's nominally a structure where they've implicitly suggested that when you use Duolingo, their end of the bargain is that they will, in theory, teach you a language. As far as I can tell, even their short courses are decent sources of content, and using this method, you can get a pretty solid foundation before moving on to either more self-directed study with free resources on the internet, or once you know you really want to continue with the language and you've invested some time and energy and seen a return, you can buy a textbook or sign up for a course or whatever. So what do you think? Have you ever used or misused Duo like this? Do you have a 600-day streak but an inability to speak your target language? If you like what I'm doing with the channel, you can always support it on YouTube with super thanks or over on Patreon at patreon.com/languagejones. Please leave me a comment. They are great for the algorithm. And subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, happy learning.